Back to the Future remains one of cinema's most beloved treasures, a perfect blend of comedy, science fiction, and heart that continues to captivate audiences decades after its 1985 release. But beneath its polished surface lies a labyrinth of production challenges, casting revolutions, and creative decisions that most fans have never fully uncovered. What if everything you thought you knew about the making of this iconic film was just the tip of the temporal iceberg? What if the most fascinating stories happened not on screen, but in the desperate scramble to salvage a film that was nearly abandoned? And what would you say if the chemistry that made this movie magical almost never happened at all? Let's pull back the curtain on Hollywood's most perfect time travel adventure and examine the near catastrophes, last-minute decisions, and hidden performances that shaped its journey from troubled production to cultural phenomenon. This is the story of what the Back to the Future cast and crew endured to create cinema magic, revealing details that forever change how you'll watch this classic film. Back to the Future wasn't just another 1980s comedy. It was the culmination of a perfect storm of talent, timing, and tenacity that almost never materialized. The film we know and love today emerged from a creative crucible that nearly shattered multiple times during its journey to the screen. At its core, this is a story about hidden resilience, a director fighting for his vision, a young actor pushing through a punishing schedule that few could endure, and a cast that weathered one of Hollywood's most infamous mid-production overhauls. The Back to the Future we cherish exists because of four unprecedented challenges that were overcome against all odds. First, the script that major studios rejected for years before finding its champion. Second, the original casting disaster that nearly sank the project 6 weeks into filming. Third, the inhuman production schedule that forced its star to literally work around the clock for months. And finally, the hidden performances. Subtle choices the actors made that created deeper meaning, most viewers never consciously register. Director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale had shopped their time travel screenplay around Hollywood for years, facing rejection after rejection. The concept was deemed too innocent for the R-rated comedy era, too risque for Disney, who specifically objected to the mother falling for her son, and simply too risky for studio executives who couldn't categorize it neatly. It took Steven Spielberg's considerable industry clout and his belief in the script's magic to finally push the project into production at Universal. But getting the green light was just the beginning of the struggle. What came next would test everyone involved and transform a troubled production into cinema history. Michael J. Fox wasn't supposed to be Marty McFly. This fact, though widely known among film buffs, masks a deeper reality about the actor's life that would shape his performance in ways audiences rarely perceive. The original Marty McFly was Eric Stoltz, an intense method actor fresh off critical acclaim for Mask. For nearly 6 weeks, Stoltz inhabited the role with a seriousness and dramatic weight that increasingly concerned Zemeckis. Where the director envisioned a light comedic touch, Stoltz brought dramatic intensity. After reviewing footage with Spielberg, Zemeckis made the nearly unprecedented decision to recast his lead 6 weeks into shooting, a $3 million gamble that could have ended careers. "I just wasn't getting the laughs I thought I should be getting," Zemeckis later revealed. The drama was there, but there was no real comedy. But the public persona of Michael J. Fox, the charming, effortless star of Family Ties who seemed born to play Marty, masked the brutal reality of what accepting the role meant. What viewers never recognized was the physical toll this replacement job took on the actor, creating a performance forged through extraordinary personal sacrifice. Fox was already working exhausting 10-hour days on Family Ties, with NBC initially refusing to allow him to take the film role. Only after complicated negotiations did the network relent, leading to a shooting schedule that defies belief. Fox would work on Family Ties from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., be driven to Universal Studios, and then film Back to the Future from 6:30 p.m. until 2:30 a.m. He would snatch a few hours of sleep before repeating this punishing cycle for 2 months. "I had no life," Fox later admitted. "You're supposed to be able to have a cup of coffee in the morning and talk to people. I never saw anybody except for people on the set." This exhaustion paradoxically created the Marty McFly we know and love. Where Stoltz approached the character with intense method preparation, Fox, operating on minimal sleep, brought a natural, reactive quality that perfectly suited Marty's constant state of bewilderment. The very limitations of Fox's schedule created the spontaneous, authentic performance that made the character iconic. And beneath this physical ordeal lay another layer most viewers never perceive. Fox was hiding the early symptoms of the disease that would later define his public life. While the Stoltz to Fox transition has become Hollywood legend, a far less known creative decision fundamentally transformed Back to the Future from an interesting time travel concept into a multi-layered masterpiece. The original script, already clever and entertaining, featured a much different ending that would have altered everything we associate with the film. In early drafts, Marty and Doc Brown didn't harness lightning with the clock tower. Instead, they powered the DeLorean by driving it into a nuclear test site in Nevada. This literal blast from the past would have created a completely different visual language for the film's climax. The original screenplay featured no clock tower sequence at all. The now iconic Save the Clock Tower flyer and the pivotal lightning strike were additions made during the fourth major revision of the script, just months before production began. This change did more than just alter the climactic sequence. It fundamentally restructured the entire film's symbolic architecture. The clock tower became the perfect metaphorical centerpiece, a physical manifestation of the film's themes about time itself. It created visual symmetry, established the rules of the time travel mechanics more clearly, and allowed for the precise timing that made the finale so satisfying. More importantly, this rewrite deepened the film's emotional resonance by tying the climax directly to Hill Valley itself. Rather than ending in an anonymous desert, the story concludes in the heart of the town square, the same location where George and Lorraine's love story began. This decision created a circular narrative that subconsciously satisfies viewers with its perfect symmetry. "The clock tower gave us everything," Bob Gale later explained. "It gave us a ticking clock, a specific place and time, and a way to visually show time literally stopping for a crucial moment." But perhaps the most significant change came in how the screenplay evolved to develop George McFly's character arc. In earlier drafts, George's transformation from pushover to confident man was more sudden and less earned. The revisions carefully constructed a more gradual evolution that culminates in the perfectly timed punch that flattens Biff. This narrative decision, to make George's journey the emotional spine of the film, transformed Back to the Future from a clever sci-fi comedy into a deeply resonant story about family, self-worth, and the ripple effects of courage. The final script found the perfect balance between sci-fi concept and human heart. These creative choices weren't just good ideas. They were the difference between a forgettable 80s comedy and cinematic immortality. And the production challenges were just beginning. The physical toll of Back to the Future's production created a behind-the-scenes reality that few Hollywood productions have ever matched. What viewers see as a seamless adventure was, in reality, a masterclass in problem-solving under impossible constraints. After the Stoltz recasting, Universal gave Zemeckis just 116 days to deliver a completed film, a time frame considered inadequate for even standard productions, let alone one requiring complex special effects, stunt work, and a lead actor available only nights and weekends. The pressure was crushing, and it fell most heavily on the shoulders of Michael J. Fox. Fox's daily schedule was nothing short of inhumane. After full days filming Family Ties, he would rush to the Back to the Future set, often working until 2:30 a.m. On weekends, when most cast and crew could recover, Fox would film for up to 22 hours straight to capture daytime scenes, impossible to shoot during his weekday night schedule. "I'd get to work, put my head on the desk for 20 minutes, And that was my day's sleep, Fox recalled in a later interview. I went through 2 years in 5 months. I certainly aged. The physical effects became evident to the cast and crew. Christopher Lloyd, who portrayed Doc Brown, later revealed, "There were times when he was so exhausted during filming that crew members found him asleep standing up between takes. They'd wake him just before the cameras rolled." This exhaustion created a visible transformation in Fox throughout the film that most viewers never consciously register. Watch carefully, and you'll notice Marty appears increasingly haggard as the film progresses. Not makeup, but the actual physical toll the schedule took on the actor. The sleep deprivation wasn't the only physical challenge. The famous scene where Marty hangs from the clock tower hands left Fox with lasting injuries to his hands. The hoverboard sequences in the sequel would later add further injuries to his already taxed body. During the filming of the Johnny B. Good sequence, Fox played guitar for 12 hours straight to get the choreography right, developing blisters so severe that the medical team advised stopping. Fox insisted on continuing, performing through significant pain in what would become one of the film's most iconic scenes. Meanwhile, Christopher Lloyd created Doc Brown's manic energy through complete physical commitment, often leaving him exhausted and vocally strained. The lanky physicist's wild gesticulations and vocal exclamations weren't just acting choices. They were physically demanding performances that left Lloyd drained after each take. What's remarkable is how none of this physical strain shows in the film's buoyant energy. The finished product feels effortless, a testament to the cast's professionalism and Zemeckis' skilled direction. This dissonance between the grueling production and the joyful final film remains one of Hollywood's greatest magic tricks. But the physical challenges pale in comparison to the hidden details planted throughout the film, layers of meaning that even devoted fans often overlook. Back to the Future is a masterclass in narrative efficiency, with almost every frame containing purpose and meaning beyond what most viewers ever consciously register. 3 particular elements reward close attention and transform how you understand the story. First, the hidden symmetry of Hill Valley across time periods. Zemeckis and his production team created a visual language that subtly communicates the town's decline. In 1955, the courthouse square features a pristine lawn with flourishing trees and a functional clock. In 1985, that same square has become a decaying parking lot surrounding a neglected clock tower. This visual contrast isn't just set dressing, it's commentary on American urban development. Even the businesses around the square tell a story. The cinema, showing classic films in 1955, becomes an adult theater by 1985. The gleaming new Essex Theater becomes a dilapidated church. These transformations aren't random, but carefully crafted visual storytelling that most viewers absorb only subconsciously. Second, watch Crispin Glover's extraordinary physical performance as George McFly. In every scene, Glover uses precise body language to communicate George's transformation. Early in the film, he literally can't look anyone in the eye, his shoulders permanently hunched in a defensive posture. As his confidence grows, Glover gradually straightens George's posture, culminates in his upright, confident stance after punching Biff. "I developed a specific physical vocabulary for George," Glover later explained. His nervousness isn't just acting nervous. It's a lifetime of physical habits formed from fear. The third hidden layer involves the mathematical precision of the film's editing rhythm. Editor Arthur Schmidt created a pace that subtly accelerates throughout the film, with shot lengths gradually decreasing as the clock tower finale approaches. This creates a subconscious tension that viewers feel but rarely identify, pulling them forward through the story with increasing momentum, literally manipulating our sense of time through editing. The famous DeLorean time travel sequences follow a precise mathematical pattern. Each one is exactly 1.21 seconds shorter than the previous sequence, a subtle nod to the 1.21 gigawatts needed for time travel that creates a subconscious sense of acceleration throughout the film. Perhaps the most overlooked detail is how the film visually reinforces its central theme about the butterfly effect of small actions. When Marty returns to 1985, everything seems identical at first glance. But careful viewers will notice dozens of subtle differences in his house, his neighborhood, and his family. These aren't continuity errors, but intentional markers of how profoundly Marty has altered his own timeline. These layers of meaning weren't just artistic flourishes, they were necessary adaptations to the film's most significant production challenge, the battle for creative control. Behind the joyful exterior of Back to the Future raged a tense battle of creative vision that nearly derailed the entire project multiple times. This conflict wasn't just typical Hollywood disagreement. It represented a fundamental philosophical divide about what kind of film this should be. The trouble began with the film's title. Universal executives were convinced Back to the Future would confuse and alienate audiences. They pushed for alternatives like Spacemen from Pluto, a suggestion so absurd that Spielberg famously responded with a memo thanking them for the wonderful joke, pretending he thought they weren't serious. This shamed the executives into backing down without direct confrontation. But the title battle was merely the opening skirmish in a larger war. The studio fundamentally misunderstood what kind of film they were making. They wanted a raunchy teen comedy in line with other successful 1980s films, pushing for more explicit content in the scenes between Marty and his mother in 1955. Zemeckis fought to maintain the delicate balance of the awkward mother-son dynamic, knowing that crossing certain lines would transform the film's tone from comedic discomfort to inappropriate territory. His insistence on restraint, making the incest taboo implicit rather than explicit, created the perfect, uncomfortable tension without alienating family audiences. The PG rating itself became a battleground. Universal, seeing the success of R-rated comedies, pushed for more adult content. Zemeckis and Spielberg held firm in their belief that the film needed to be accessible to wider audiences. This wasn't just artistic idealism. It was commercial insight that the studio initially failed to recognize. They kept saying, "This needs to be edgier," Bob Gale recalled. "We kept saying, this needs to be universal." The irony is, we were arguing with Universal to make something truly universal. The conflict extended to casting decisions beyond Stoltz. The studio initially rejected Christopher Lloyd as too obscure and pushed for more conventional choices like John Lithgow. They questioned Lea Thompson's casting, preferring actresses with more established box office draw. Crispin Glover's eccentric interpretation of George McFly raised continuous red flags with executives who wanted a more conventional performance. In each case, Zemeckis held his ground, sometimes risking his career on these decisions. The same instinct that led him to replace Stoltz 6 weeks into production guided these other choices, a clear vision of the film's unique tone that executives couldn't yet see. Perhaps the most significant battle involved the film's ending. The original script concluded with a more subdued return to 1985, showing the incremental improvements in Marty's family. Studio executives, conditioned by blockbuster formulas, pushed for a more dramatic finale. The compromise, the revised ending with Doc appearing in the upgraded DeLorean, setting up a potential sequel, was one of the few instances where studio intervention improved the film. This creative tension ultimately produced something neither side could have created alone, a film with mainstream appeal that never sacrifices its intelligence or artistic integrity. But the irony of this success story was just beginning to unfold. The greatest irony of Back to the Future's production mirrors the very time paradoxes at the heart of its story. A film about changing destiny was itself transformed by a series of fateful interventions that reversed its seemingly doomed trajectory. Consider the film's most famous rejection. Columbia Pictures executive Sidney Sheinberg reportedly dismissed the script with the criticism, "Time travel movies don't make money." This same executive would later witness Back to the Future become one of the most profitable time travel films in cinema history. But the deeper irony involves Michael J. Fox's casting. The actor, who seemed born to play Marty McFly, whose performance defines the role so completely that it's impossible to imagine anyone else in the part, was never supposed to be in the film at all. His involvement required the extraordinarily rare decision to fire an established actor weeks into production, a costly gamble that could have ended careers. Just as Marty's interventions in 1955 transformed his 1985 reality, the decision to replace Stoltz fundamentally altered the film's destiny. What began as a creative crisis became the very salvation of the project. Sometimes the best decisions feel like disasters when you make them, Zemeckis reflected years later. Replacing Eric was the hardest professional decision I'd ever made, and it felt like we were killing the movie. Instead, it saved it. The cosmic timing extended beyond casting. Alan Silvestri's now iconic musical score, one of the most recognizable in film history, was almost rejected entirely. After hearing Silvestri's first draft, Zemeckis asked him to start over with something bigger. The composer had just days to create a new orchestral approach that would become his signature style and one of cinema's most beloved musical themes. Silvestri composed and recorded the entire score in just 2 weeks, an almost impossible time frame for an orchestral work of this complexity. The Back to the Future theme has since become one of the most recognizable musical signatures in film history, despite being created under immense pressure as a last-minute replacement. Perhaps the most profound irony lies in the film's relationship with time itself. A movie about the danger of altering timelines was itself salvaged by a dramatic last-minute change. A story about the pressure of a ticking clock was created under the most punishing deadline imaginable, and a film about second chances became a second chance for nearly everyone involved in its creation. Christopher Lloyd, primarily known as Reverend Jim from Taxi, found his second iconic role and cinematic immortality. Zemeckis, coming off the commercial disappointment of Romancing the Stone, established himself as a directorial force. And Fox, despite his established TV success, cemented his status as a film star. Like Marty McFly himself, the production team found themselves racing against impossible odds, making desperate choices that, against all expectations, created a perfect future no one could have predicted. This parallel between the film's story and its creation adds a metatextual layer that enriches the viewing experience, once you know where to look. But the film's most surprising legacy wasn't just its success. It was how it fundamentally changed Hollywood itself. Back to the Future didn't just succeed. It rewrote Hollywood's rulebook in ways that continue to shape filmmaking decades later. Its $381.1 million worldwide gross against a $19 million budget made it 1985's highest-grossing release. But its true impact transcended mere numbers. What made this success so revolutionary was how it defied conventional wisdom about what a blockbuster could be. It wasn't based on an existing property. It featured no major stars in leading roles. It contained minimal special effects compared to other sci-fi blockbusters. And perhaps most significantly, it triumphantly blended genres: comedy, science fiction, drama, and romance, at a time when marketing departments preferred clearly defined categories. Nobody understood what we were making, producer Bob Gale later admitted. It wasn't until audiences saw it that everyone suddenly got it. Then everyone claimed they knew it would be a hit all along. The film's success validated Zemeckis and Spielberg's vision against studio skepticism, demonstrating that audiences would embrace high-concept premises delivered with heart and intelligence. Back to the Future proved that originality could compete with franchises, that concept could trump star power, and that PG-rated films could dominate the box office without sacrificing creative ambition. The industry took notice. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, studios increasingly greenlit high-concept original properties that blended genres, films that might never have existed without Back to the Future proving their commercial viability. The success created the industry leverage that allowed Zemeckis to make boundary-pushing films like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Forrest Gump. For the cast, the transformation was equally profound. Michael J. Fox transcended his television fame to become a legitimate film star, leveraging his Back to the Future success into a cinematic career that included The Secret of My Success, Casualties of War, and Doc Hollywood. Christopher Lloyd found himself forever associated with Doc Brown, a character that overshadowed his previous work, despite decades of diverse roles. The film's cultural penetration reached beyond box office and awards. It introduced phrases like 1.21 gigawatts and "you're just too darn loud" into the lexicon. The DeLorean DMC-12, a failed automobile that had ceased production years before, was transformed from a footnote in automotive history into one of the most recognizable vehicles in popular culture. The DeLorean Motor Company had gone bankrupt in 1982, 3 years before Back to the Future's release. The film so thoroughly revitalized interest in the vehicle that a new company was eventually formed to service existing DeLoreans and manufacture replacement parts, creating an entire industry sustained by the film's cultural impact. Perhaps most significantly, Back to the Future demonstrated the commercial potential of intelligent family entertainment that refused to talk down to younger viewers. The film tackled complex concepts: the butterfly effect, causality paradoxes, the malleability of history, while remaining accessible to audiences of all ages. This blueprint for smart blockbusters would influence filmmakers for generations, from The Matrix to Inception to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all of which followed Back to the Future's example of respecting audience intelligence while delivering spectacular entertainment. But the film's influence extended far beyond Hollywood, reshaping how we think about everything from fashion to technology to our relationship with history itself. Nearly 4 decades after its release, Back to the Future's cultural footprint continues to expand in ways its creators could never have anticipated, influencing fields far beyond cinema. The film's vision of 2015, with its hoverboards, self-lacing shoes, and flying cars, became such a powerful technological aspiration that it directly inspired real-world innovations. Nike released actual self-lacing shoes, the 2016 HyperAdapt, and later the 2019 Adapt BB, specifically citing the film as inspiration. Multiple companies, including Lexus and Hendo, invested millions developing functional hoverboard prototypes based on the film's depiction. More profoundly, Back to the Future changed how popular culture discusses time travel. The film's internal logic, with its emphasis on causality, paradoxes, and branching timelines, established a vocabulary that subsequent films, books, and TV shows would either adopt or deliberately subvert. Before Back to the Future, time travel stories were mostly about visiting history, science fiction author Ted Chiang observed. After it, they became about changing history. The film fundamentally shifted the trope from observation to intervention. This narrative influence extends to unlikely places. Video games like Chrono Trigger, Life is Strange, and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time all incorporate time manipulation mechanics that owe a clear debt to the film's cause and effect approach. Television shows from Doctor Who to Russian Doll have explicitly referenced the film's time travel rules. The film's fashion impact proved equally enduring. Marty McFly's outfit, the down vest over layered denim and plaid, has been repeatedly revived by designers seeking 1980s nostalgia. The Nike Mag shoes from the sequel became one of the most sought-after collector's items in sneaker culture, with limited edition releases raising millions for Parkinson's research in partnership with Michael J. Fox's foundation. In 2011, Nike released 1,500 replicas of the Mag shoes, raising $4.7 million for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. In a poignant echo of the film's themes about how the future connects to the past, the auction helped fund research for the very disease Fox was beginning to battle during the original film's production. The fictional town of Hill Valley has become a case study in urban planning and historical preservation circles, with academics analyzing how the film depicts American urban development across different eras. Architectural students study the set design as an example of visual storytelling through environmental changes. The DeLorean's transformation from failed automotive curiosity to cultural icon represents perhaps the most dramatic real-world impact. John DeLorean's stainless steel creation was headed for obscurity before the film immortalized it. Today, surviving DeLoreans command prices far beyond their objective value, maintained by specialized mechanics whose entire business model exists because of the film. Beyond these tangible impacts lies something more profound. Back to the Future has shaped how multiple generations conceptualize the relationship between past choices and future outcomes. The film's central metaphor, that small actions can have enormous consequences across time, has become a framework through which many people understand their own lives. This philosophical influence speaks to why the film endures beyond nostalgia. Back to the Future tapped into something fundamental about human experience, transforming a sci-fi comedy into something approaching modern mythology. After peeling back the layers of Back to the Future's production challenges, hidden details, and cultural impact, we arrive at the deeper truth that explains its enduring resonance. Beneath its sci-fi comedy exterior beats a profoundly human heart, exploring universal questions about identity, family, and self-determination. The film's genius lies in how it disguises philosophical depth within entertaining packaging. On the surface, it's a rollicking adventure with a clever premise, but its